Hi, my name is Alexia Morris, and for this conference, I will be presenting on balancing civil liberties, public safety, and national security. I'm Alexia Morris. I'm a senior at Southern Utah University. I am a criminal justice major and legal studies minor, which is why I was interested in doing this topic. So here's kind of my overview for what I will cover in my presentation. I'll look at civil liberties, public safety, national security, and protection of civil liberties, exceptions, and we'll look at the history of national security. I'm not going to go through every single one of these because that's a bit redundant, but I just wanted to include this. And here's a quote that I really like. Freedom cannot be bestowed, it must be achieved. So what are civil liberties? Black's Law Dictionary defines civil liberties as the political freedom that is enjoyed by members of a society that restrains its people as far as is necessary to maintain the general welfare of everyone. So some places to find civil liberties are the Constitution. The body of the Constitution and the constitutional amendments are actually two separate places. Habeas corpus is one of the only civil liberties that is found in the actual body of the Constitution. And the constitutional amendments is where you can find the rest of them. Another place is case law or court cases. They don't create civil liberties, but they can give clarification from legislation, looking at legislation saying that, oh, this is constitutional or unconstitutional, and kind of clarify which civil liberties are being discussed in that legislation. And if the state constitutions want to, they can also include their own civil liberties in there. What is public safety? U.S. legal defines public safety as public safety refers to the welfare and protection of the general public. It is usually expressed as a governmental responsibility. Most states have departments for public safety. The primary goal of a department is prevention and protection of the public from dangers affecting safety, such as crimes or disasters. There are several governmental institutions in place for public safety, such as police departments, fire departments, public jails and prisons, and departments of transportation in regards to road safety. National security is defined by U.S. legal as a corporate term covering both national defense and foreign relations of the U.S. It refers to the protection of a nation from attack or other danger by holding adequate armed forces and guarding state secrets. Public safety in the context of the whole country is usually referred to as national security, which is why I included it with my presentation. The body of the Constitution actually contains a definition for treason, which relates to national security, as treason is betraying your country. And it also lays out the terms for conviction and the correlating punishment. This is actually the only crime that is laid out in such detail in the Constitution. Otherwise, it gives the power of definition to the state governments. Protection of civil liberties is pretty important, and this can be done in several ways. Like I said, it can be enumerated in the Constitution or in state constitutions. It can also be done through federal or state legislation and case law. Some examples are Roshan v. California. This emphasized the importance of due process as fundamental right. Due process being the rights that are afforded to someone who is accused of a crime. Griswold v. Connecticut established, this is kind of the first case to really establish a fundamental right to privacy, which is not explicitly enumerated in the Constitution. However, in this case, the court decided that looking at the Fourth Amendment, it was an implicit right that was kind of implied by the explicit language of that amendment. One of the most popular ones most people know is Miranda. In Miranda v. Arizona, it was established that a suspect is entitled to hear what rights they have upon arrest. So this would be the right to remain silent, the right to counsel, stuff like that. There are, however, some exceptions to the civil liberties of an individual person. While they are incredibly important, they are not prioritized if they put the safety of the public or another individual in danger. There is an exception to reading someone their Miranda rights. An individual temporarily loses their right to be informed of their rights upon arrest if there exists a danger to either the police officers, the public, or another individual. Freedom of speech is one of the most popular ones, but there are actually types of speech that are not covered by the First Amendment, and those are obscenities, profanities, fighting words, libel, slander, and clear and present danger, which would be something like yelling fire in a crowded theater and causing a panic, which could hurt people when there is no fire. Some protections of public safety. So sometimes it's necessary to prioritize public safety over the civil liberties of an individual. This would be like mandating seatbelts and car insurance. This isn't to override our civil liberties as individuals, but in fact to protect other people on the road and other people in the car with us. The biggest example of this, it seems so obvious you wouldn't think about it, is actually when someone breaks a law and when they become a threat to public safety, depending on the severity of the crime, we incarcerate them and we remove them from public in order to keep the public safe. Back to Miranda, the exception to Miranda, New York v. Quarles. In this particular case, the police officers were not required to Mirandize a suspect when they were asking about where he had hidden a loaded gun that could be found by another individual, potentially even a child. This could also apply to questioning terrorists. So the United States has quite the history with national security debates. One of the earliest is the Alien and Sedition Acts. This lengthened the naturalization process to become a US citizen from 5 to 14 years and also made it a punishable crime to speak out or publish materials criticizing the government. After that was the Japanese internment camps during World War II. All Japanese Americans were sent to internment camps in order to prevent them from spying on their mother country, even though they were in fact American citizens. McCarthyism and communism during the Cold War is another example. This was kind of a communist witch hunt. Anyone who was accused of having ties to the Communist Party was blacklisted, and occasionally they were even imprisoned. The most recent and most popular example is 9/11 and the Patriot Act. The Patriot Act expanded the intelligence gathering powers of the government that was originally granted by the Foreign Intelligence and Surveillance Act. So what the Patriot Act did is it made it so that the United States government could gather intelligence domestically and not just from foreign entities, basically. So they could spy on people within the United States that were thought to have ties to terrorists. So the government has a bit of a habit of claiming national security in the name of public safety. And there have been several occasions where they have actually trodden on the civil liberties of the United States citizens, claiming that national security was the reason. The Alien and Sedition Acts back in 1798 was an example, very clearly violated the First Amendment to the right of free speech by saying that people weren't allowed to criticize the government or publish anything criticizing the government. The Patriot Act was later found out that violated the Fourth Amendment right to freedom from unreasonable or warrantless searches and seizures when it was discovered that the United States government was actually using it to spy on their own citizens. And this was outside the scope of what they should have been able to do with their intelligence gathering activities. So why this is relevant today, there are several hot topic buttons such as gun control, Me Too movement, COVID-19 and mask mandates, stay-at-home orders, privacy concerns, as well as immigration into the United States. So all these reasons are why I decided to look at this topic. And what I did is I created a survey asking some people about their constitutional rights. I wanted to see kind of what they knew. My hypothesis when looking at this is that most people haven't read or even looked at the Constitution. What I actually found out is that most people have at least read some of it. I didn't actually get any answers where people said that they had never read the Constitution, but only 34% had read the entire thing. Most people have just read parts of it. I have several other questions here for some questions that I asked. like whether or not there's a constitutional right to privacy, and if the amendment, the First Amendment, protects all free speech no matter what. And like I talked about earlier, no, there are some things that it does not protect, and that there isn't a specific right to privacy in the Constitution, but it has been decided by case law that there is an implied right to privacy. And I also wanted to know if people thought the constitutional law should be a required high school class, and I was pleasantly surprised to find that most people do think it should be. So kind of my thoughts on the survey results was I was surprised to learn how many people actually had read the Constitution, but I was a little more concerned that they didn't have a really great understanding of some of their more basic rights. And I kind of realized how media is responsible for some of that. Like how a police officer does not have to read you your Miranda rights as soon as you're arrested. You have to be first in custody, and you have to be about to be interrogated. And TV has misled a lot of people by showing the police officer arresting someone and immediately reading them their Miranda rights. I think this has a lot to do with why some people don't understand their constitutional rights, is not just the Miranda rights, but just TV in general. So to conclude, I think it's important that we are knowledgeable of our rights as citizens. And most people have a somewhat basic understanding of their rights, but I think it's safe to say that the average US citizen is not as educated as they should be, as well as some instances when their civil liberties are not the most important thing in that moment, when public safety might be of a bigger priority. And I do think the constitutional law should be a required high school class to hopefully promote the education and constitutional literacy among United States citizens. And here are my references, and I hope you guys enjoyed this presentation.